Hello, my name is Bill Lytle and I'm Director of Christian Formation at St. George's Episcopal Church in Clifton Park, New York, and I would like to welcome you to part 2 of our series on C.S. Lewis and the Four Last Things. I hope that in the last few days that you've been able to get a hold of a copy of The Great Divorce so that we can begin reading through it and reflecting on it together. Today I'd like to take a look at chapter 1. As I studied it the last few days, I realized I'd like to take chapter 1 and chapter 2 separately. In both of those chapters, we get a good view of Lewis's imaginings of hell. In the first chapter of what the people there are like, and then of the second chapter of what the place itself is like. And in both chapters, we get a lot of fundamental concepts that we'll need to continue to reflect on through the rest of the book. And so today, chapter 1 of The Great Divorce. Of course, the chapter opens with our unnamed narrator wandering through a city, a very gray, drab, dreary, abandoned city. He doesn't know quite where he is, and we don't know yet, but we'll soon find out that he is in hell. And perhaps that's a very different way to imagine hell than you're used to. It's very different than the traditional fire and brimstone picture of hell. This is a very quiet place, a very almost eerily peaceful place. He'll soon find out that it's not anything like peaceful. But as he wanders through the city, he only encounters people when he arrives at this, what seems to be a bus stop, people waiting in line. And so he joins the line. And immediately upon joining the line, we get a picture of what the people who inhabit this city are like. And I'd like to read a bit of Lewis's description of the first people he encounters. The narrator says, "I had a stroke of luck right away, for just as I took my stand, a little waspish woman who had been ahead of me snapped out at a man who seemed to be with her. 'Very well, then, I won't go at all, so there,' and left the queue. 'Pray don't imagine,' said the man, in a very dignified voice, 'that I care about going in the least. I have only been trying to please you for peace sake. My own feelings are, of course, a matter of no importance. I quite understand that.' And suiting the action to the word, he also walked away. Come, I thought, that's 2 places gained. Now, over the next few minutes, as he waits in line, he's going to gain several more places as well. But that first interaction with the people there shows something very important about the state of these creatures, we could call them, that he encounters in this city. They are not crazed demons. They don't seem to be violently evil at any point. They don't seem to be rejecting any concept of right or wrong or going off into some sort of barbaric behavior on the surface. They try to maintain an appearance of dignity, of respect, and that will carry through most of these ghosts that we'll encounter throughout the story. But what we see here from the very first interaction, and which we will see in almost every interaction, is that these people have become obsessed with themselves. They are constantly quarreling. They are constantly fighting. They will constantly be asserting their rights, demanding what they deserve. They will constantly be claiming to have sacrificed so much, to be giving and giving and giving and never getting in return. They are full of self-pity. I didn't want to come, I just came for you. They are also full of self-righteousness. The state of the souls in hell is one of self-obsession. It defines them. Every single one of them that we will encounter is obsessed with themselves, turned in on themselves would be the theological language. That is the state of the souls in hell by definition. They are turned in on themselves. Now in part 1, I talked about how this imagining of hell is really to teach us about ourselves. And so the question we need to ask ourselves over and over again in this story is, how are we turned in on ourselves? How are we more like the ghosts, more like the souls who are waiting for this bus, than like the other people that we will encounter when the bus reaches its destination? How are we turned in on ourselves? How are we obsessed with ourselves? How do we define ourselves with self-righteousness or self-pity or some idea of constantly self-sacrificing? And perhaps hardest for all our culture, how do we assert our rights? Rights is an important word in this story. Ghost after ghost that we will encounter will assert its rights, will get what it deserves, or at least try or demand to get what it deserves. And in the culture we live in, that is seen as a positive virtue. It's American to fight for your rights. But what Lewis is telling us is that rights are a very different thing. When these souls get to where they're going on the bus and they encounter the blessed souls who have come to meet them from heaven, they'll be told over and over again that what they need to do, the only thing they need to do, is surrender, is to give up this idea of getting what they deserve, of demanding their rights. Because before God, they have no rights. And that's maybe hard for us to hear. Before God, we have no ground to stand on to demand we be treated in a certain way. Before God, we can only plead for mercy and surrender anything we think we have to offer. The souls in hell are grasping. That defines them throughout the book. They are holding on to old things, and we'll encounter that in several chapters. But the souls, the blessed souls, they remember their lives, and they still love the people from their lives. But they have surrendered all of that. They have let it all go, and they have received in return the kingdom of God and all those things besides. So is that hard for you to hear? That what you need to do is surrender your rights, is to give up what you think you deserve, is to stop making demands and simply accept God's grace and His mercy. How can we each be less like these people He encounters in line and more like the people we will encounter further on in the book? Now, the first person that we encounter who comes down from the blessed country is the bus driver himself. And the reaction that the people in line have to him is very telling. They project their own feelings, their own behaviors, their own attitudes onto him. They say about him, "Looks as if he had a good time of it, eh? Bloody pleased with himself, I bet. My dear, why can't he behave naturally? Thinks himself too good to look at us. Who does he imagine he is? All that gilding and purple, I call it wicked waste. Why don't they spend some of the money on their house property down here? God, I'd like to give him an earful." I could see nothing, says the narrator, in the countenance of the driver to justify all of this, unless it were that he had a look of authority and seemed intent on carrying out his job. In the driver, they do see true authority and true meaning, but it doesn't come from the driver himself. It comes from the one the driver serves, and that infuriates them. They can't stand it. They hate the driver because of that. If you're watching this in real time, then we're about to embark on Holy Week. Tomorrow is Palm Sunday from when I'm recording this. And I think this is an important lesson for us to reflect on through Holy Week, especially through this very odd Holy Week of 2020 that we're all about to have. Who in the story demands things? Who in the story is infuriated by authority and intention, by the qualities that the people hate in the driver? And who in the story surrenders and submits and insists on having no rights at all? And who in the story would we rather be like? Who are we called to follow and to imitate? Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you will continue to participate in this study. I will put my email address again in the description so that you can send any thoughts you had on chapter 1 to me, and I look forward to meeting again in the next few days to discuss chapter 2 and the vast expanse of hell that our narrator sees as he begins his journey. God bless.